Everyone loves a good legend. And yet, in many cases, these word-of-mouth stories are totally false. For example, if you're from New Jersey, you likely don't have to worry about the Jersey Devil. And if you live in the Pacific Northwest, Sasquatch isn't stomping through your backyard. But while plenty of urban legends are pure fiction, there are some that are shockingly true. With that in mind, let's take a look at 15 legends that are actually based on true stories, not just wild imaginings. And trust us, some of these tales are even more scary than the myths they inspired. Number 15. The Story of Charlie No-Face. The tale of Charlie No-Face is one of those stories that started with a tragic truth but got wildly exaggerated over time. Here's what really happened. In the early 1900s, a Pennsylvania boy named Ray Robinson suffered a horrific accident when he was electrocuted by a trolley wire. The damage was severe. His facial features were permanently disfigured, leaving him with an unsettling appearance that made people avoid him. As he grew older, Ray became somewhat of a local mystery, venturing out for nighttime walks when fewer people were around. But the rumor mill did what it does best, turning a man with an unfortunate past into an urban legend. Soon, whispers of a glowing, radioactive green man haunting an abandoned tunnel spread across western Pennsylvania. The truth? Ray was just a real person living his life as best he could after a devastating accident. But as far as urban legends go, Charlie No-Face still haunts the imaginations of those who hear his story. Number 14. Reptiles living in city sewers. The whole alligators in the sewers legend? Well, it depends on what era we're talking about. In the early 1900s, wealthy New Yorkers had a bizarre habit of bringing back baby alligators from Florida as pets. And like most impulsive pet owners, many realized pretty quickly that a growing gator wasn't exactly the best housemate. What did they do? According to the legend, they flushed them down the toilet. And while that sounds ridiculous, there's some basis to it. In 1932, the New York Times ran a story about a group of teens who claimed to see a gator crawling out of the Bronx River. Over the years, more reports surfaced of scaly creatures lurking where they shouldn't be, fueling the legend that the city's sewers had become a secret reptilian kingdom. Fast forward to today, and no, there aren't colonies of alligators living in your city's underground tunnels. But once upon a time, there might have been a couple of rogue reptiles making an unplanned detour into the Big Apple's underbelly. Number 13. Contaminated Halloween candy. Every year, as kids gear up for trick-or-treat, parents have one persistent fear. What if someone tampered with the candy? The idea that a psycho neighbor might slip in razor blades, poison, or drugs has been around for decades. But how real is it? The paranoia kicked off in the 1960s when a Long Island woman, annoyed by older kids' trick-or-treat, handed out steel wool and dog biscuits instead of candy. No one got hurt, but it was enough to stir the pot. Then, in 1970, the New York Times ran an article stoking the fear further. It only got worse when a Texas boy died from poisoned Halloween candy that same year. But the real horror? His own dad was the one who laced it, not a random stranger. Despite a few scattered reports over the years, a study by sociologist Joel Best concluded that nearly every Halloween candy scare was either a hoax or an accident. Yet, the legend persists, proving that sometimes fear itself is more powerful than the truth. Number 12. The Hermit of Maine. When you hear the word hermit, you don't usually think serial burglar. But for nearly 30 years, residents near Maine's North Pond dealt with a mysterious figure who kept sneaking into their homes, not to steal money or valuables, but to grab flashlights, propane tanks, and snacks. At first, it was just a weird annoyance. People would wake up to find their food missing, their batteries gone, their extra jackets suddenly not where they left them. As the years passed, the legend of the faceless hermit in the woods grew stronger, with some wondering if he even existed. Turns out, he did. In 2013, police finally arrested Christopher Knight, a middle-aged man who had been living completely off the grid since he was a teenager. He admitted to committing over 1,000 burglaries just to survive. He wasn't dangerous, just an extreme introvert who preferred the solitude of the wilderness over society. All right, guys, now let's talk about number 11, Bloody Mary. What started as a slumber party dare has one of the most unsettling backstories. While there are multiple theories about Bloody Mary's origins, one of the strongest links ties her to Mary I of England, the ruthless Tudor queen who burned over 300 Protestants at the stake. But before it became a bathroom mirror game, the ritual had a more superstitious purpose. Young women once walked backward up a flight of stairs, candle in hand, staring into a mirror, hoping to glimpse the face of their future husband. But if the Grim Reaper's skull appeared instead, it was an omen of death before marriage. Over time, the ritual took on a more sinister twist. Now, all it takes is chanting Bloody Mary 3 times in a dimly lit room to summon her spirit. Whether she appears with a blood-curdling scream or a cocktail in hand, that's anyone's guess. But those who swear they've seen her, well, science calls it hallucination. They call it proof. Number 10, the babysitter and the man upstairs. No babysitter ever wants to hear these 8 words. The call is coming from inside the house. But in this terrifying legend, that's exactly what happens. It begins like any other babysitting gig. Quiet house, kids asleep upstairs. Then the phone rings. A raspy voice on the other end whispers, "Have you checked on the children?" At first, she brushes it off as a prank, but the calls keep coming. The voice grows more insistent. Shaken, she dials the operator who traces the call. Then the warning, "Get out of the house. The call is coming from inside." While the tale has taken many forms over the years, its roots are disturbingly real. In 1950, 13-year-old Jeanette Chrisman was found murdered while babysitting in Columbia, Missouri. The killer was never caught. The legend? Well, it remains a cautionary tale for babysitters everywhere around the world. Number 9, Cropsey, the Staten Island boogeyman. Boogeymen have haunted children's nightmares for centuries, each generation spinning its own version of a lurking figure who steals kids away. In the 1970s Staten Island, Cropsey was that shadowy terror. Parents warned their children about the hook-handed killer who supposedly roamed the abandoned buildings and snatched kids who wandered too far. It was just a scary story, until it wasn't. Enter Andre Rand, a janitor at Willowbrook State School, a nightmarish institution known for its inhumane treatment of disabled children. Between 1972 and 1987, multiple children vanished without a trace. When the body of Jennifer Schweiger was found near Rand's makeshift campsite, reality and legend blurred into one. Rand was convicted, but many of the missing were never found. To this day, some believe Cropsey was more than just one man, that the legend still lingers in the woods, waiting for the next child who doesn't come home. Number 8, the murderer in the medicine cabinet. Mirrors are eerie enough, but what if someone was lurking just behind yours? The Candyman horror film cemented the urban legend of a killer emerging from a bathroom mirror, but this wasn't just Hollywood fiction. In 1987, Chicago resident Ruthie McCoy made a frantic 911 call, screaming, "They're coming through the medicine cabinet." Police dismissed it as paranoia. 2 days later, she was found dead in her apartment. The terrifying truth? Public housing units had a flaw. Bathroom cabinets shared a thin, unsecured wall with the next apartment. In some cases, intruders crawled through these openings to access unsuspecting victims. McCoy wasn't hallucinating. She was living and dying inside an urban legend that was horrifyingly real. Even today, people hesitate before staring too long at their bathroom mirror because once you know someone could be watching from the other side, it's impossible to unsee. Number 7. Body under the hotel bed. A couple checks into a cheap hotel. The room smells off, a thick, rotting stench that lingers no matter how much air freshener they spray. After restless nights and unanswered complaints, they lift the mattress and find the decomposing body stuffed underneath. Sounds like the kind of horror story someone made up to freak out travelers, right? Wrong. This nightmare scenario has played out multiple times in real life. In 1991, a body was found under a bed in a Las Vegas motel, undetected for days, despite guests sleeping inches above it. In 2003, the Capri Motel in Kansas City was the site of a similar case. More recently, in 2010, a missing woman's body was discovered beneath a mattress in Memphis. It's not just an urban legend, it's a disturbingly common one. So next time you check into a hotel, maybe check under the bed before settling in. Number 6. Real corpse decoration. A haunted house attraction is all fun and games, until one of the props turns out to be a real corpse. Meet Elmer McCurdy, a failed outlaw who died in a 1911 police shootout. When no one claimed his body, a funeral home saw a business opportunity. They embalmed him and put him on display for paying customers. For decades, McCurdy's body traveled the country, passed between carnival sideshows, and eventually forgotten as a mere prop. That is, until 1976, when a TV crew filming in an amusement park funhouse knocked over a suspiciously realistic mannequin. When one of its arms broke off, it revealed human bone. After 65 years as an attraction, McCurdy was finally identified and given a proper burial. But for years, thousands unknowingly stood next to a real corpse, mistaking it for a cheap decoration. We mean it when we say this legend is dead serious. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes fact is stranger than fiction. So next time you're at a haunted house, make sure to double-check the props, just in case. Number 5. The licked hand. A girl home alone, just her and her dog. In the middle of the night, she hears a steady drip. Too tired to check, she reaches down from her bed. Her dog licks her hand, reassuring her. By morning, the dripping continues. She finally investigates and finds her dog hanging from the shower head, its throat slit. Blood drips into the tub. On the wall, scrawled in smearing red, she reads, "Humans can lick too." This terrifying urban legend has haunted generations, warning of unseen intruders hiding inside homes. Though its origins remain uncertain, it eerily resembles an 1871 burglary case, where an attacker mimicked a pet's comfort to trick his victim into staying put. Whether a ghost story or a cautionary tale, one thing is clear. When something licks your hand in the dark, you better hope it's your dog. All right now, let's talk about something pretty spooky. Number 4. The bunnyman. The name might sound harmless, but the bunnyman legend is anything but. According to the story, a mental hospital patient escaped in 1904 and took refuge under a bridge in Fairfax County, Virginia. Locals whispered that he hung rabbits from trees, then graduated to children, leaving their bodies dangling beneath the bridge. Chilling, but also almost certainly fake. What isn't fake? 2 bizarre incidents in 1970. A couple parked in a driveway was confronted by a man in white, possibly wearing something on his head, who threw a hatchet at their car before disappearing. Just weeks later, a security guard reported a rabbit man wielding an axe, aggressively chopping at a porch. After that, the bunny man was never seen again. But the legend? Still very much alive. To this day, Fairfax locals avoid the infamous Bunnyman Bridge, just in case. Number 3. Killer elevators. A person steps into an elevator, the doors close, and then it malfunctions in the worst way possible. Sounds like a horror movie, right? Unfortunately, it has actually happened. One of the most disturbing cases occurred in 2003 at a Texas hospital. A 35-year-old surgical resident followed his colleague into an elevator when the doors suddenly closed on him and didn't stop. His upper body was inside the car, but his legs were still outside. The elevator began to ascend. Despite frantic efforts to stop it, it was too late. The malfunctioning elevator severed him in half, leaving his colleague in shock. Though multiple safety features usually prevent these tragedies, faulty wiring was blamed for this horrific event. While such accidents are rare, the thought of stepping into an elevator and never stepping out the same way is enough to make anyone take the stairs. Number 2. Dead people in drinking water. It's the kind of horror you never want to think about, but sometimes reality forces you to. People using their hotel faucet, filling their glass, only to find out the water has been running through a corpse. In 2013, guests at the Cecil Hotel in California complained about strange-tasting, discolored water. The source? A decomposing body floating in the water tank. It was later identified as Elisa Lamb, a missing woman whose mysterious death still sparks conspiracy theories. More recently, as Lake Mead dries up due to extreme drought, decades-old bodies have been surfacing, some linked to mob hits from the 20th century. Well, it is crazy. Number 1. Killer in the backseat. A woman drives alone on a dark highway. A car suddenly appears behind her, flashing its lights, honking like crazy. She panics. No way she's stopping for some psycho tailgating her at midnight. She speeds up. He speeds up. What does he want? This terrifying scenario has been told in countless ways. In one version, she makes it home, and the driver jumps out, not to attack her, but to drag out the man hiding in her back seat. Turns out the flashing headlights were warnings, not threats. In another version, she stops at a gas station, where the attendant cleverly gets her inside and alerts her to the stranger lurking in her car. While mostly an urban legend, this story does have roots in real-life events. In 1964, a New York police officer shot an escaped convict who had been hiding in the back of his patrol car. The tale may have evolved over time, but the fear, that's as real as ever. We hope you have enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you very soon in the next one.